sale is concerned, they're part of one sale.
Right.
Okay?
Correct.
So we're not proposing anything on the 1 acre lot at all. At this time, we know that the channels would be, if we ever wanted to, which is not even in the mind of the near future, that we would do that.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
go.
I think that what Mr. Doggett was talking about is if we decided that you didn't know to go anywhere for any variances and this
Yeah.
would be a plausible thing, he would just like to see this and not,
Right.
Okay, and
You-
we
you-
You
apologize.
need to stick to lot 24.
because what you're purchasing is
It-
not our concern. It's
Right.
what
Okay.
you want to do with this piece of property.
And we apologize, because
No.
we don't want to purchase any of it, obviously, if we can't do what we can't do.
Yeah. Right.
I got
Because
you.
it's one sale, that's why it came up, but yeah, we can
Sure.
eliminate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Scammon did mention, the septic system had enough capacity so that if something were happening on lot 24, and I'm like, unless you're going to sketch that all in now.
I don't think that's what I was trying to get at. I said,
Oh, okay.
when we were here before, we had designed a separate septic for lot 25.
Right,
So, and that we were proposing nothing on lot 25.
okay.
We were trying to come here bare bones, spending as little money as possible, because if you say that they can't do this, so we just used our old drawings, we tried to clean them up and take things
Oh,
off,
okay.
and we didn't, we could take the viewport and lop it off here,
Yeah.
so that it's not there, but it was just simpler because they are, proposing to buy both, and I just figured we'd let you know that there is nothing proposed, and they're not planning to change anything on that lot, to let you know that at this time.
Okay.
Well, what's the board's feeling about whether this could go forward the way it's proposed, or do they need to go to the zoning board for a variance for the description of what they want to do, commercial as opposed to light industrial?
I'll wait for some advice from Jen, but my feeling is that you would not describe it as a warehouse, but describe that building as storage for your sales, and to me, it sounds like at that point it can go.
I quite honestly look at it, it's the same as when we had a hardware store in town. We had a hardware grain store. They had a large barn out back, which is where they stored hay, because hay is not little items. It's not warehousing, it's
Storage.
business storage.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it, too.
Okay.
I don't think he has to make any changes, just come in with a new plan.
Yeah.
And actually,
And change the wording a little bit.
the way this says, it says proposed wholesale storage and sales building.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
That's what we have on our application also.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
So, yeah, you might want to stay away from the warehouse word, just because it might confuse things.
So just because this is binding, you don't have to take a motion. If you don't want to, you can just by consensus
Right.
Yeah.
or by comment.
So far you have 3 that seem to be,
How do you feel? Yeah? Okay. You feel like, okay?
yeah.
All right, so I guess
Consensus, a unanimous consensus
consensus of the
that
board
we should be able to.
that you can move forward and just officially,
Yeah, it's
Submit a
appropriate,
plan.
appropriate use and fits on
right,
the property, but we still need to see the finished drawings.
Sure.
okay?
With that said, could I ask one more, a question? The drainage in the rear of the lot has all been built, it's all in place. It's designed for this much impervious area. Where does the board think we'll go with drainage? Because today's regulations are slightly different. This is all built to try to retrofit things to today's requirements. It says, I don't know I mean, it meets, the storage, it meets what was then the treatment. So I just was curious on what your thoughts were, if we reduce some of the pavement so that there's less impervious area, would the board be willing to possibly look at a waiver for that? Or I'm just trying to balance some idea of where the board's thoughts are on that so that we know I talked to Jennifer about possibly putting in a waiver for this, and she said she wasn't sure what the board would do, of course, because she can't make those decisions.
I'm going to say something, and I'm not being facetious, but that's why you went to college, to figure out how to come up with the best solution. That then has
So the
to,
board is aware, just regulatory wise, what was used to design, the town standards when this was originally designed used old rainfall patterns.
right.
Which have
You
changed.
now have the newer ones you have for quite some time.
Right.
That said, just based on the slopes, I suspect that any additional runoff would largely fall onto the state road, which as far as what the town is responsible or not. So, I mean, it
Oh, yeah, a whole
probably
new
is.
page in the MS4.
There is the MS4 aspect, but just so you know, that the amount of stormwater that they'd be having to deal with today is more significant than what they would have had to deal with before.
Right.
But that detention pond may be sufficient to handle even the new rain.
I have a question for you, though. This retention pond was built based on the size of this building that's on here now.
And pavement.
If they wanted to build a bigger building, which I believe that that's what I heard you say you wanted to do.
Exact
Oh,
same.
no, you didn't. Okay, I'm sorry, then I misunderstood you, because I was wondering if that would still apply then. Okay, then if you're
Yeah,
not,
and that's what I was saying is, if the board would have some comfort with us reducing pavement and not get, and do less pavement because it was designed the way it was, if the board might have more comfort with, some sort of waiver on drainage. So I figured I was here tonight, I'd get some feeling for that because, I don't wanna hold up the project.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if we can reduce the amount of pavement because of the increased rain events, so that the total rainfall is taken into account. I'm
you're
just trying to
talking
get
about
some.
now about building a little bit smaller building.
Well, the
Oh, no,
pavement is the
maybe less
biggest,
pavement.
the biggest thing.
So the stormwater would come from the pavement and the building. If they reduce the pavement area,
I
just
got
by
it.
sheer nature, you're gonna
Okay,
have
okay.
less runoff.
All right, so gravel
Yeah,
or
I was
whatever,
just
yeah,
going to say,
okay.
that's going to change your flow rates, but once again,
Yeah.
that's why
No,
you're trained as an engineer.
I just, instead of going through and trying to cross every T because this is already partially built, and I'm just trying to figure out where the threshold of the board would be to, if we lopped off a whole bunch, whether it's an acre of pavement or half an acre of pavement, the amount of runoff would be much less.
Right,
Roof runoff traditionally doesn't have to be treated because it's not running across where the oils and drippings out of vehicles need to be treated. Now, we have treatment with grass treatment swales, as we originally had planned on it, and this site is gonna be much cleaner than running excavators and payloaders and, construction equipment over it, so it's a much cleaner site in the end than what it used to be. So what I'm just trying to ask the question is if we take off a section of pavement so that there's less runoff, meaning, that this pond will be oversized per the old regulations, but basically designed for today's regulations, I'm just trying to get a threshold of, do we need to start getting into any infiltration and other things that today's state
I
regulations?
can probably
are-
sum it up in one sentence. Prior to what was witnessed earlier this evening, we are actually a very nice board.
I've never had a problem with the board here. I've always enjoyed my time in Newton, so I'm not too worried about that.
The best thing we can say to you is draw it, explain it to us.
Okay.
We'll send it to, our experts.
Sure.
And they will do the calculations, and we're not unreasonable.
Sure.
So but the runoff from the parking lot goes to the back part of the lot, or does it go out to the road?
No, it all goes to the back part of
It
the
all
lot.
goes to the back?
It gets treated in the swales, goes into the pond in the back, and then as an overflow, it goes through a riprap area to slow it down, and then it goes into the wetlands in the rear, and then flows off the site. Now, since I was here the first time in 2000, I'm not sure I haven't driven out on the road. When I went through this wetlands area, which was the old right-of-way, it was a pristine, it was hard to walk through because it was so wet. I know that some of that has been filled by other owners. So I don't know what happens to the water today on that road. I know that
Right.
there was culverts. When I was here in 2005, that was just starting to transpire. So this is an isolated wet pocket. We plan to have new wetland scientists redelineate that so that everybody in front of me and everybody behind me will know exactly where those wetlands are. The great thing from the aerial photography and the pictures I've taken on site is that rocks were lined around this so that the wetlands were not disturbed. We are planning to take and let this all grow back into grass. It already is starting to, in the pictures I've taken. I have recommended to the potential owners that they mow it once a year as, you know, with a brush hog or something, just to keep it from growing up into a jungle, you know, because who knows what the future has.
Right.
And I grew up on a dairy farm, and I'd rather see mowed areas than, and being a surveyor, I don't like to have to walk through raspberries and rose bushes and everything else.
Right.
So it's just better for the
Sure.
environment, in my mind, if you
Right.
mow it and maintain it as a grassed area. That's what they are thinking they're gonna do. We're gonna keep the path out to the back so that they can get down there to maintain it. Since we were here originally, we worked with Ms. Farrell, the butter. We did a lot line adjustment. Some of you may remember that. We gave her some more land because her leach field was over the property line onto Mr. Early's property. So this, that's why this lot area is slightly different than it was in 2005. So the three owners, or two owners and one potential owner, all have tried to make this site a better site. Each time I've worked to come to you, and everything I've seen from their current site, I think, is exactly that, is you're gonna have their headquarters and make it a much nicer site for when you enter Newton from Plastow. And
And it might also give some relief to the residential abutters who have always complained, still complaining about dust.
dust and construction,
Yeah.
we won't have any of that.
Right.
No, that'll all be,
I was going to ask you, in the past, I seem to remember that along this property line with the back of the houses from Howard Lane, that at one point in time, they were asked to
tree
plant
buffer.
some trees, and then they trimmed them all the way up this high so that they didn't create a buffer.
You know, I
It's like
have some
there's
pictures.
like this much,
Yeah.
there was this much trunk, and then the tree grew up.
It's still a buffer, it's what kind of buffer it's
Well,
supposed to be.
the original intent, I think, when we asked for that, was that it would fill in down along the ground so that, right? Do you remember
But,
that?
yeah, but one of the things that we were discussing was not so much a visual buffer, but something that would do noise abatement.
No, right, and
And
when you
that's why
have a
we-
tree trunk that's this tall and then the vegetation, that's not really,
I will say that if this application has come to you, this might be a really good site walk.
Yeah.
I took a
yeah,
bunch
you'll
of
have to
pictures,
just
just pass them
bring
around.
here, yeah.
This evergreen row is on the slope beyond the.
Oh, maybe it's filled in from the last time I remember, I'm sorry.
You can see that there's a heavy evergreen, and from the aerial photography, let me see if I can have that with me. And I may not have printed the aerial photography. You can see I encourage you all to look at the aerial photography.
Actually, it'd be easier for us to just do it, once the application is received, we can go
Sure.
down and do a
We'll go to the
sidewalk.
sidewalk, yeah.
If you guys would want that, I would just offer that as a suggestion.
Okay, it looks
There's a
like
whole bunch of
lot
pictures there, but-
vegetation, more than I
Yeah.
thought it was from what I had
The
seen.
front pictures were the ones that had the evergreen
Okay.
hedgerow.
Okay, Sandy, keep passing.
It looks like there's some really tall ones, but then there's,
Okay, yeah, because
lower
this
ones
would
are
be the
growing in, too.
road here, so.
Oh, okay. All right, it filled in better than what I had remembered seeing. Okay. I
But
retract my
one of the
question.
problems that people never remember is that trees grow.
Well, I appreciate the question because I'd rather you guys know now what it looks like and
Right,
that
no, that
and we're
looks
not
fine.
worried about it and later, and when we go out on the site, everybody can see it, so.
See, I would allow the raspberries to grow along that. The wild
Maybe we can do
roses.
it in windrows so that you can pick them from both sides, but, so, do you have any other questions at this point?
Anybody?
Any questions or thoughts?
Jen?
You happy? Okay.
My only thing if you do come back, which I suspect you're going to, is just have a good feeling for how the flow is going to work with any delivery trucks, and if you're gonna have any bays or not, or loading docks or not.
There'll be 4 loading docks. Previously, everything, the whole front and some of the side had garage doors or docks. We are proposing, I believe it's 4 loading docks at this point, is what we've talked about, maybe 5. So there'll be a lot less garage doors. This whole area will buffer, the existing building will buffer that. We have talked about possibly taking the building and rotating it and looking at some other things. At this point, we don't know if we're even gonna do that, so we wanted just to come with this. Traffic, they get a few tractor trailers in and a few tractor trailers out in a day. Probably not much different than what's there, other than it'll be during their business hours. You are not a 24-hour business? No. So they're not as if they're working
Yeah,
all the time.
We will expect to see business hours
Oh,
on the plan.
Yeah, exactly. No, I understand that, but I just wanted to give you a feel for the business, so that you are not surprised when we come back and, so.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, no, it's the same.
More traffic, it's exactly the same as what's going on at Public Way. Nothing.
I think what the board's asking is about tractor trailer traffic patterns on the site and the turning radiuses coming in and out of those entrances, is what I was interpreting what you were asking, correct? Because
Yeah.
the only thing is, the tractor trailer traffic that's coming won't have to come this far into town, it only have to come this far into town. So, they're already coming here, it'll just be less traffic on 108, that
Right.
next half mile or mile it is to Puzzle Lane,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
One thing you may want to look at is the state has access control for Route 108. And I'm trying to remember whether or not there's a berm in front of
There's-
that.
Yeah, there is,
Okay.
there is. There's a
They
berm
put
in
curbing
front.
in, Mr. Early had put,
Okay,
minimize that.
I
We did
remember
get
it
a
for years when it was
wide open.
Chevrolet,
There's a
and
little
there was
berm right
nothing
here.
there.
There's a little berm right here.
And
We
we've
did get
had
a
some
permit
situations
before.
in town where the state has come down and said, you need to put a berm island here to control access.
And I'll bring pictures in when we come back.
Yeah.
But that was all closed off. A lot of this frontage was
Right.
closed off. There's existing pathways or driveways.
Mm-hmm.
And we did get permits from DOT in 2000 and in 2005 when we were back.
Right, there's like 2 different entrances. Yeah, I was there not so long ago in that parking lot.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, let's see. All right.
Acceptance of minutes.
Other board business and correspondence. I would like to have a
Move to accept
motion
the,
on the minutes of July 25th.
move to accept the minutes of 7/25/17.
Second,
Second.
Any discussion?
we're getting good, Jim.
Yes, I
That's when
did.
he saw I look at him. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Was that unanimous?
Yes,
Yes.
that was in, I'm gonna take something out of order. Well, no, do we have manifest?
We have,
Manifest? Yes, okay. Hang on. Okay. Operating manifest, postage and telephone, $103.28.
Move to pay the operating budget manifest.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Okay. Okay, NEPA expense manifest is Kinsley, $942.34.
Move to pay.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. Okay. Next item is correspondence, and we have received a letter of
Interest.
interest from Mr. Zott, who's sitting here today, that he would like to be an alternate member of the planning board.
I should comment that it would be returning to the planning board.
Ah,
Mr. Zott is a former member.
okay.
I would make a motion that we appoint Paul Zott for a 3-year term as an alternate.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I think,
Oh,
Okay, that's a good idea.
I don't know.
Thank you.
I
I
don't.
apologize.
been sitting here all this time.
That's okay.
I mean, you know him, but I want to hear.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Paul Zott. I live over in Brimstone Circle. I used to be involved with the town quite a bit. I was on the planning board, I was on the commercial and industrial board for a while. I worked on both committees for the centennials. And most people know me as the husband of the painter in town. Anything else you'd like to know?
So how long ago were you on the planning board?
Wow.
Hector was a pup.
90, maybe 92, 93, 94,
Oh, wow.
somewhere in that
Okay.
area.
All right.
Quite a ways
and
back.
you served until like 98 or 01.
Something like that, yeah. I'm terrible with dates. My wife is the date person.
Because for some reason, I want to say when I became an alternate, there was an opening because they moved somebody up from the alternates when you left.
I'll agree with that.
Thank you. Well, we
Put it this
have,
way, he knows the name Ned Nichols.
Oh, yes.
well, we
I
have,
live at Sergeant Woods.
It was like Old Home Day
Yeah.
last meeting, because some of the same guys who were there when I was here.
Right.
And I'm looking for plans again. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
we have a motion and a second.
Now, this
Yes.
is for a term till,
3 years.
It's a 3-year
Three-year
term as alternate.
but shouldn't they actually end in April so that everybody is in April?
Oh, yeah,
So it'll be April of
2021?
20?
2020.
21.
21.
Well, that would be more than 3 years.
That would be more than 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so it'd be
2020.
20.
Yes.
So till after the election in
Yeah, so
2020.
it's a 2.5-year appointment.
Right, okay,
So it goes to April 1st, 2020.
okay.
Mr. Melvin.
Okay. How many alternates are we allowed and how many do we have? Just out of
We're
curiosity.
We're allowed
seven.
5,
All right.
we're allowed 5, and we have 3.
Right.
Yep.
And we have one who's never come.
I always
Yeah.
thought it was 4.
No. It's either-
Some towns limit it to 4, but you have more than that.
Yeah, we do.
Actually, the statute allows us to have as many alternates as there
Well,
are
I don't-
elected
I'm not-
members.
I'm not having any
Okay.
problem with that. I was just asking the question.
Yeah, actually, we're,
We don't have a whole lot of active ones.
Right,
Actually, we try to encourage them to be active.
right.
I do too.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have
I
a
guess
vote?
that is my other question. Hopefully, you're planning on being an active alternate.
So the reason why I'm getting involved again is because I recently retired, so I have lots more time to do
Good,
this.
that's
Good.
great.
Congratulations.
I'm not racing home from work to try and make a meeting. I'm not,
Alright.
eating in the car outside while I'm waiting for the meeting to start and all those
Great.
crazy things I used to do.
I'm done.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, welcome.
Thank you for your consideration and your
And you
vote.
can see
Appreciate it.
Gail maybe Thursday, and she can give you all the books that you need.
Okay, great.
Well, it's gotta get
And she'll
And
give you
We
the
also need
schedule.
to sign a,
Do you swear me in, or does?
No, the town clerk will. downstairs, but I'll
Right.
let them know that you're coming in. I don't know that they'll be able to do it that quickly.
They may not be able to do that, but he can come and get his
You
information.
can, we do phone numbers, address and all that, although I got most of it right on your email.
It may take them a few days to get the paperwork together, and then you'll have to come in and swear your oath.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay?
Very good, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And welcome.
We have non-cars.
Yeah. All right. Now what do you got here? All right, what is this? Okay. The New Hampshire SFI Implementation Committee invites you to a field day about state-owned land certification on September 22nd in Lancaster, New Hampshire, all-day tours, and if you're interested, this mostly is something to do with the forestry people. You can see Gail and she can give you specifics, or I can pass this around and people can look, whatever. All right?
This is just the
Oh,
alteration.
the alteration of terrain permit has been authorized for on the new
The
fire
fire station.
station.
For where?
New
Oh,
fire
yeah.
station, right?
That's from the state,
Going ahead, finally.
Mr. Early down in Pleasant.
As a matter of fact,
Oh.
the groundbreaking is on September 5th
Right, at 5:30?
at 5:30.
September 5th at 5:30 for the ground break. We received from the state, they received an application from Early and Sons, who's down at Puzzle Lane, and they've started the application process to determine whether the applicant meets the qualifications for a retail dealer license and registration. And we gave Mr. Early permission to sell what his cars and stuff. And they wanted to know, can you please confirm if there are multiple units at this location and if there are already other businesses operating at this location? So the answer to that is yes.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes, so we'll fill this out and we'll just send it back to them. I just wanted to let you know we have that. Okay. I have something that's not on the agenda. Lot 27-2 has submitted a revised, or submitted their application to the zoning board for variances.
Not for variances, for two
Excuse
equitable
me,
waivers.
equitable waiver of dimensional requirements.
Correct.
Sorry, I misspoke. I'll let Ms. Rowden explain some of the things that she wants to, but I also want to tell the board that there were several statements on Mr. McDonough's application that are not correct. And along with the information that Ms. Rowden is going to put together to give to the zoning board when this applicant goes before the zoning board, I'm going to write a little letter explaining. We're not trying to impede him at all, but I just want to correct the inferences that he had made on his application that the planning board did this and the planning board did that, and when in all reality, they did not do this or that, what he was stating. So he misstated things. I don't know whether, so I would just like to clear that up. We're not trying to impede his process. We're just trying to make sure they have a clear idea of just what happened.
So, so you're gonna write up something to send to the
Well,
zoning board?
so let me backtrack a little bit. I had, just because it's so the ZBA application is so integral with the site plan that I've already received their full site plan application last week, midweek. So I had asked if I could have a copy of it, just because it's useful for me. And I happened to notice that on some of the statements on the dimensional requirements, there are a few statements that are simply legally false as to what the planning board can even do. So if you want to, you certainly are well within your right to be able to submit a letter to the zoning board stating what you have jurisdiction over to do, and I'm happy to supply you with some information if you want to put that in your letter. What I am planning on writing that will go to, well, I don't typically send my review letters to the zoning board because there's such integral processes going on with the boards. I was going to submit my review of the site plan to the planning board, the select board, the building department, and the ZBA. This would be the same letter you would normally get. I'm just going to CC the other involved land use boards and departments.
Right.
But there are a few aspects of the equitable waiver regarding what the planning board has the authority to do or not. Just as an example, one of the statements is that the planning board made a mistake in changing the zoning, which,
Look, I honestly, I read the application, and when you say infers, no, it basically slams the planning board with a lot of really incorrect information.
Well,
I
mean,
would
and-
suggest that you present the factual statements.
Right, and that's all I want to do, because, I mean, in the beginning, it was like, the planning board approved this plan. Well, we did, but that was that many years ago, and it expired since then. So, I mean, it's, a lot of things just need to be made a little clearer.
The other component that if you would want to put it into a letter or not is, that's fully your decision. But just, in just my own opinion, given what I've seen ZBA's grant or planning boards, I actually don't believe that Mr. McDonough qualifies for an equitable waiver. And this is the planning, or the ZBA decides this, the planning board does not. But some of the criteria that are put forth for you to receive an equitable waiver is that there has to have been substantial completion of a project.
Right, and he's arguing that he's already done substantial completion.
He is arguing that he has done that. He has poured foundations. Whether the ZBA agrees with that or not, that's up to them. And in cases I've seen, that generally does not, an entire building being built, yes. A foundation,
Well, actually, he claimed, and I read it, that, and like his attorney claimed here, that he had met the active and substantial listing that was on the document because he worked on Puzzle Lane,
and
not
I
because
do
of.
not believe that is
Not because he did his
an accurate
driveway.
interpretation of that.
Because I saw that in the minutes of the zoning board, and I, again, we spoke about that, and I know, I made the comments about, we're talking about the lot, not all of Puzzle Lane.
Exactly. However, I believe that, I would like to see the plan that he is submitting with the application to see whether or not that note is still there.
Okay. I have also asked when, after they go to the ZBA, if the ZBA grants anything, I have asked Gail to ask the zoning board if they will please, all the members who are at that meeting, will they sign the bottom of that plan
Yes.
so that we can see if we're going to see the same plan that they saw. And I just think that that's good practice. Because we need to make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. I mean, because then he will be needing to come back to us, and we need to make sure it's going to be the same thing.
Right, but, okay, so, Jen, you're gonna do your review, write your standard review letter.
Yes.
Are you also gonna address the other issues, or are you gonna address
I
them?
was
And are you gonna do it in person or with a
No,
letter?
no, I was gonna do it in a letter. I was gonna write something up and have Jen look at it and tweak it where we need to have the letter
I'm
tweaked.
happy to help with the factual of, how the planning board goes about a zoning change, for example. You did not create a 30-foot setback to a 50-foot setback by mistake unless there was a typo on the warrant article that year. I suspect that's not what happened.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the only answer he gives to one of the questions. There are criteria questions you know.
So we just want to make sure they get all the right facts. That's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just, that's my point, and I just want to make sure whether, you know, how are we going to get the facts as we know them
Presented to the.
presented to the zoning board before they make a decision?
Yes.
And either from
should
Jen or
go,
from
or-
you, or
right.
between the
Yeah.
two of
Right.
them. Work
I
together.
think you have a couple of options. You can authorize Barbara to work with me to craft a letter from the planning board.
That sounds like a wonderful idea.
Well, and there's a second option that you can also choose. You can authorize her, if you wanted to speak on the board's behalf at the meeting, or as individuals, not as planning board members, but as individuals. You could certainly acknowledge that you are a planning board member. Go to the ZBA hearing. That you have the right to do as well.
I like the letter thing.
Do you know what's the date of the
Ready?
meeting?
I will move that we authorize the board chair to confer with the circuit rider and develop a letter or letters.
Signed by either of them, or both of them.
Let me finish. To further educate the ZBA in factual matters regarding that
Okay.
lot.
I have a
Second.
motion. Mr. Hamel seconds. You had a question?
Well, I was just going to ask about the equitable waiver.
Actually, that's
So we
not-
can vote on the
that-
thing
okay.
first.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Equitable waiver isn't us.
Did you vote?
It's
That
the
is
zoning
just the
board.
zoning.
Right, I just wanted to, why did they apply for that? Because they-
Equitable waivers are generally a way of legally acknowledging that a mistake has been made unintentionally for issuance or building of a building or a roadway too close to a lot line or a wetland. It's dimensional only, it's not use variances. But it's, as an example, you guys had a lot a few years ago where the planning board erred and allowed a lot to be built closer to the lot line than their zoning allowed, and it wasn't discovered for a number of years. In that case, an equitable waiver was granted because the entire building had been built, the stormwater infrastructure had been built, the buildings, I believe, were occupied at that time. To tear down all of that because they didn't meet a setback requirement was considered by the zoning board to be too much. It wasn't worth the effort.
So this is to correct something he thinks we did.
No, this is to correct the fact that 2 foundations were poured closer to the lot line than are currently allowed
On
under
an
your zoning.
expired plan.
On an expired plan.
Right.
Okay.
And we
And
directed him,
that's
that's what he should
Easier for
be
them
doing.
to get than the variance?
Their attorney believed that the correct course of action was to get an equitable waiver versus a variance.
It's easier to get an equitable waiver than a variance.
They have different criteria.
Right, it's not that easy to meet all the variance criteria.
The attorney's point was that, what was the substantial work, active and substantial work?
So the thing that you have to, is that substantial completion of a lot has occurred before the violation is discovered. That is the RSA language. It's different than active and substantial,
right.
which just, the submitted application does include that active and substantial, the same definition.
And the interesting thing is the concrete was poured after it was discovered that his plan had expired. So he chose to do this at his own risk.
I thought,
No, the
I thought-
permit was issued, but
no, the permit was issued, but I think that it was when he asked the town engineer if he would come out and take a look at it, and he said, well, I don't have any plan.
right, but at that point,
The foundation
the
hadn't
plan
been poured yet?
hadn't been poured
Oh,
yet.
okay, well, whatever.
At this point, a foundation has been poured closer to the lot line than
Right.
it's supposed to under zoning.
And when's the zoning board meeting?
September 12th? No, 11th, I'm sorry.
And
September
when's our next meeting?
12th.
The day after? Okay.
Okay, all right.
Can, after the letter gets drafted, can you send it out to the members of the board?
It can be sent out.
We can send it, but you can't comment on
You
it.
can't reply
Right,
all, you
yeah,
can't
right.
comment.
You can see it, but
Right,
you can't comment on it because that would be a meeting.
Correct.
but then,
Well,
that
It can be
might
sent out
help.
in draft form only for informational purposes.
Yeah, right,
Right.
If
Ga-
you have a problem, you can call Barbara and speak directly to Barbara.
right,
Right, but you can't,
yeah, right. We-
I-
yeah,
Anybody who
Don't
hits
start getting into
reply all
all of those,
will
that
have
you're
their
gonna cause
fingers
trouble.
broken.
right,
Yes, no,
okay.
Have Gail send out the final or the draft version, whichever you feel comfortable with.
and what you do
Well,
is you
actually, the law
BCC
allows you to
everybody.
send, as long as it's in draft form.
I agree with you, it's better to not get into that situation.
But yeah, I'd rather,
But if you BCC everybody, then at least.
I was just
you-
gonna say,
you-
yeah, that's the
you-
easiest
You
way.
avoid the reply to all
Yeah.
mistake.
Okay.
for those of us that have taken one too many right-to-know classes in
Yeah.
the state.
Okay, I have one more thing. The Board of Selectmen has decided that from now on, all evaluations are due on September, on September 14th.
Right.
So, that means that Gail's evaluation is going to be early. Jim and I will be working on that, and we will have to have a non-public meeting portion at our next meeting, which I believe is September 12th, to review her evaluation, and then we can give it to the selectmen on the 14th, because it's due on the 14th. So we meet on the 12th, and then we'll give it to the selectmen.
For what it's worth, I suspect Lot 27-2 is going to be a long discussion, if that.
When did we last do her review?
It doesn't, the selectmen have decided that everybody's evaluations are
It's gonna
due
be about
on,
a year though, because I got hired in
Yeah.
March, my 6 months,
Right.
it's about
Yeah.
September.
So the-
I thought we just did one.
yeah, everybody's
Time flies
evalu,
when you're having fun.
yeah, everybody's evaluation will be due on the same time now,
Right.
from now
We're
on.
doing, we're reviewing all of the evaluations in
So
October
I can put him on
and
the
setting
agenda.
potential pay raises in November
I think it's a
for the next year's
No, say
budget.
September.
It's reached that
don't say
level,
October.
yes.
No, they're due in
Yeah, usually
September
give me a-
so that we can start looking at them. There's,
It's gonna be 6 months before you decide if people get a
No,
raise?
no.
What?
no,
Don't get the raise until January.
they're due in the middle, so that we have one selectmen's meeting in September and two selectmen's meeting in October, two selectmen's
Okay.
meetings in
So in
October.
other words,
To
you get
review
them,
the entire town of employees.
all right,
I think you know what I'd be.
okay,
Or, so that their pay raises can be built into the future, the
Okay.
next year's budget.
Right.
all right. Okay, then, let's do it this way. I have a suggestion. Maybe we should have our non-public at the beginning. We'll look over Gail's evaluation, and then we can come back.
Do we want to
Can
do that at 6:30?
Oh, we could do that at
What if she
6:30.
doesn't like it
Absolutely.
and she quits on us?
I don't think she's gonna quit.
Yeah, I won't find out till after.
Meeting's over.
Yeah. Would everybody
You
be,
guys just talk, I won't find out for another week.
would everybody be able to make it at 6:30?
Is that on September 12th?
Yes.
I have
I
no
will not be
problem.
here.
Huh?
I will not be here at 6:30.
Okay, I don't think you need to be
I don't
here at
think I need to be
6:30.
either.
Actually, as a circuit rider, you can't
you-
be in the non-public for that.
I can if you
Okay.
want me to be.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to be.
Okay, so when you do the agenda, you'll do 6:30 to 7 is non-public, and then the regular meeting starts at 7.
Okay.
That's good. Okay. I don't have, oh, yes, I do have one more thing. Hang on one second. The planning board has received a donation of 3 file cabinets from Charlton Swayze.
Actually, Vanessa Swayze.
Okay, Vanessa Swayze, and we would like to thank her very much for her nice donation. Thank you.
They're very nice.
Thank you.
Yes.
You could
Okay.
send her a little.
Can we
Oh, yeah, we
accept
could send her a
stuff?
little thank you note.
Excuse me?
Yep, that'd
Can
be-
we accept stuff?
Of
Or
course
does the
we can.
selectmen have to accept it?
The selectmen did accept it.
A selectman located them.
Okay, because I had asked because the one that's in there
It's a
is broken.
selectman issue.
Actually,
Okay.
the one in the office is broken and this one in maybe we can find a way we can take the one good drawer in your office and replace the broken drawer in the
Oh, there you
storage
go,
room.
that would be good, and then you can, yeah.
After I spent 2.5 hours getting the drawer open to find out the thing was empty.
Okay. All right, hang on a minute. Ms. Rowden would like to say something.
About 2 months ago, we had talked about updating your stormwater regulations. I did a small presentation for you, and I had mentioned how the RPC was going to start having some grant funds available. At this point, I think we can still do updating your site plan regulations with updated stormwater regulations that'll be compliant with the federal MS4 stormwater permit. So I think that doing that can certainly continue. But one of the discussions we had was the general readiness of Newton for the new MS4 permit, which is slated to go into effect next July. Although we're hearing some rumors it might get delayed a year. So RPC is offering some technical assistant 50% match grants of up to $4,000 match, so a total of 8. One of the items I had talked with Jim specifically about, and I think we just sort of touched on here, was we have been pretty successful in a number of towns in forming a stormwater MS4 work group. Because to comply with the permit, there are a lot of different departments and land use boards in town that kind of need to be part of it to be successful. It's a fairly complex permit for a single person. I think Larry Foote has been the one that's been filling out the application or the annual report for you. And I don't mean to imply he's been doing a poor job by any means, but the new regulation is more complex and it involves the planning board, the road agent, public works director, select board, conservation commission, and a number of other departments potentially. So in order to make it a little bit more cost effective, RPC has worked with a couple of towns on developing this work group. Basically, we do go through an audit where we look to see what have you've been doing to comply with the MS4 permit, 'cause some of the stuff is staying the same. What are you possibly doing that you have not been capturing in your annual reports that you should be getting credit for? And what do you need to do, and when do you need to do it, and who needs to do it to comply with the permit that's going to go into effect next year. One of the planning board's rules is make sure you have the right site plan regulations to accommodate stormwater. But to basically pull a group together and start to talk about what you're doing, what you should be getting credit for, and then what you need to do, and then who's going to do it and when they need to do it. So we've done that with a couple of towns. Some towns have asked us to continue to organize that and kind of, not to oversee it, but just sort of be the organizer of keeping that group together and the occasional check-in of, yes, the road agent's doing what he needs to be, the zoning board, the building inspector, whatever the case may be, the conservation commission. Some towns have elected just to kind of do this initial group audit and then reevaluate and see where they want to go. So in speaking with Jim, that's something the select board has at least expressed some interest in and wanting to possibly fund. But it would be really helpful to have a commitment, just a letter of commitment that the planning board is wanting to also support that effort, because you would be involved outside of updating your site plan regulations.
I actually brought this up to the Board of Selectmen, and the fact that there was a matching grant, and the fact that we don't have a line item in our budget for matching grants, but the selectmen have this much broader scope of budget. And their response was almost to a person, yeah, we can match up, to about $2,500 with no major difficulty. So we'd be looking at a $5,000.
Yeah, so if you did up to that 2,500,
Right.
you'd be getting 5,000 in technical assistance.
Okay, that's good.
Is that a reasonable amount for the scope of the work you need to do? Or do we need to come up with more money?
It is certainly an acceptable amount for an initial get everybody around the table and develop more or less an implementation plan. Let's put everything in a checklist, let's capture everything, figure out who needs to be doing what and when they need to be doing it. Right. It does not cover me every 6 months coming back. It would cover a year, every 6 months after that, coming back, checking in, helping
Well,
fill
at
out
that
reports. And
point,
and that's when you can
It's
decide if
something
it's
that
worth
we
it
could
or not.
actually, we may have to work into the budget. I mean, presently, we pay the town engineer, I believe it was between $20,000 and $25,000 to prepare a major aspect of the MS4.
And you will probably still need to do that,
Right.
but he's one of the players.
But this is going to be, another line in that area of the budget that, okay, not only do we need to prepare a document, but we have to do a certain amount of maintenance and not really record keeping.
Some of it's record keeping, some of it's some mapping of some components.
My question was basically, I mean, we do have some money in our budget.
Right.
For consultation.
Well-
And do we want to look for more than, if the selectmen can come up with 2,500 from wherever, do we want to augment that from our budget?
But we-
Does it make sense to do that?
We do have a line item for consultation, that's up to,
Just as an option to consider, if you do, you could, I don't know if we're gonna offer this grant in the future or not. We would like to, it's just whether we're financially able to. We can always, if for some reason you wanted something above and beyond the amount we could match, you can have a separate contract with us in the future if the planning board, say, wants to take on the cost of continuing that work group. Doing a future contract to expand the scope of work, completely feasible.
the audit that Jen is suggesting would tell us whether or not we have the resources already in town in order to maintain the records and everything else, or whether or not it is something that it needs to be a part of the town budget. Because the MS4 is it's not a planning board
Right.
document, it's a selectman document.
Right.
So whether or not the selectmen need to look at it and say, okay, yes, we've been putting a good amount of money towards this, but they've changed it enough that, yeah, we're gonna have to up that because we need, just like at the last one, there's something called GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board. And they have certain reports that we're required to fill out every year. Well, we don't have anybody who works in this building that is GASB certified. So we have to pay somebody else to do it. The same way with this, we may have to come up with a contract with RPC and says, okay, you come every 4 months or every 6 months, you review the documents that we have, you keep us apprised of changes.
Yeah, I was just asking that if, was the $5,000 an appropriate amount to get done what we need to do at this time?
I think it is an appropriate amount to get started and not putting too many eggs in one basket. So you know where you stand before you spend, say, $40,000 on a different consultant.
Right.
Okay.
When I was talking with the selectmen, I didn't know the parameters of the grant, and I thought that it was between $4,000 and $5,000. So 2,500 was half of the max number that,
Yeah, and so we
That-
can match up to $4,000. I don't
Right.
think you guys need that much as an
okay.
initial.
Okay.
Okay,
I-
good. So you're looking for a motion of support?
Of support. I can
Right.
actually, we actually put together a standard letter if you want to use that.
Sure. And
But
I'll
it's
just
more or
sign
less
it right-
saying that,
your
yes, we
motion
will,
is to
we will
have the
support
board chair sign
the efforts
a
to
letter.
comply with the
Okay.
MS4 permit with
Okay.
RPC. That's
Mr.
more or
Hamel
less what
just
it
made a
says.
motion for me to sign the
To have the chairperson sign the letter of support?
That was a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Okay.
Charlie, what?
Won't pass it.
Okay, well,
Apologize, I didn't bring more copies of the.
I was gonna say, do we have somebody who can just read it to the group? Or have Jen read to us?
Charlie, read it to us, please.
Oh, I can't even see it. I have to wear glasses.
You want me to do it? Okay, I'll read it. Okay, I will put my glasses on and read it. How's that? Okay. Says,
Size
"Dear
10. It's font
RPC
10.
Executive Director, The town of Newton hereby supports the,
See, she can't read it.
no, I guess it's supposed to be selectmen?
It depends on who is issuing the application. It's just a
Okay.
template.
We support the application for MS4 Permit Technical Assistance Grant Program through the Rockingham Planning Commission. This proposal will assist in the town of Newton assist the town of Newton in our ongoing efforts to implement activities and strategies to comply with the MS4 permit and increases awareness of water quality in our community. The town of Newton agrees to fully participate in this process and to make a good faith effort to fully implement the project. Any regulatory recommendations produced during this process will require full board approval. The town of Newton commits to making available its resources through personal participation that will provide input, guidance, and local data throughout the project to ensure consistency with other related municipal projects and overall goals. The town of Newton commits to providing the required in-kind cash match and, if proposed, staff time, equipment, resources, etc., in-kind match as described in the draft project work plan and budget to support completion of the proposed activity project.
So you guys probably wouldn't include that last
I was gonna say,
last
that, you
paragraph.
gotta strike that paragraph.
About what?
Right, because the money's not coming from the planning board.
Right, everything that says town of Newton, you're going to put town of Newton planning board.
Yeah, you would just say the
Yeah.
planning board supports the.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
Can you re-edit the letter and send
I
it?
don't,
to
I
them?
don't think,
I can send it in
Yeah.
a Word
Yeah, why don't you
document,
send
so
it to me?
yeah.
I
Fill in
don't
those
think Barbara
spaces that
White's
need to be filled
signature on
in.
the bottom
Okay.
binds the town.
Yes, Mr. Zott.
It's just my suggestion.
I'm sorry. You don't have a mic, so.
My suggestion is to change the wording wherever it says town of Newton to the town of Newton Planning Board.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right,
That's all.
I will do that.
Yeah, definitely the
money.
funding, it wouldn't
Okay,
be
Town
coming
of
from you.
Newton Planning Board, okay, good.
So now your motion is.
motion is,
Okay,
Sign
so
the-
am I
sign-
deleting
sign
the
the
last
edited
paragraph?
right. To sign the
I would
letter
cross
as
it out.
amended.
The whole last paragraph. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this whole last little paragraph, then you don't have to
Yeah,
worry about
yeah,
the
yeah.
last match.
Right.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second,
Right.
Yeah.
and everybody vote?
Yeah?
Okay, unanimous. Thank you. All right, so you can send this to me?
Yeah, it's on our website too, if you wanted to do it first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Bob will do it tomorrow.
She won't be around in the morning.
No, I won't be doing it
Thursday
tomorrow.
morning,
I'll
enjoy
be out
your
on a boat.
cruise.
Do you want me to just take that and type it Thursday?
Okay, yeah. she
Yeah, you
said
can
she's
pull
got
it off
on
our
the
website in a Word.
Word document?
Yep,
Yeah.
you'll
And
say
then just fill in Town of
stormwater
Newton
grant.
Planning Board.
Tried to make it as easy as we could.
The Town of Newton Planning Board.
Okay.
The Newton Planning Board. There you go. Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
I don't have anything more.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, just about
9:01.